Hmm? Well, you got the mic on. Begin. Good evening. So before we begin, this council meeting formally begins. I've got prayers here for my chaplain, Palkash by Trivedi of the Sri Jawaharlal Mandir in Greenford. Family, please.
यशस्करं बलवन्तं प्रभुत्वं तमेवाधिपतिर्राजा बभूव संकीर्णनागां स्वपतिनराणां सततं सुमङ्गल्यं दीर्घमायुः ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. May all be blessed with prosperity. May all blessed with peace. May all blessed with perfection. May all blessed with bliss. Om Sahna Vavatu Sahno Bhunaktu Sahviryam Karvavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om. May we all be protected. May we all be nourished. May we all work together with great energy. May our intellect be sharpened. Good evening to honorable councillors and member guests. I hope some of you may recognize me as I have offered my blessings on previous occasions. I can certainly recognize many of you. I am honored and thankful to Mayor Councillor Hitesh Bhai Taylor and Ealing Council to invite me once again to give my blessings and prayers. I wish best of luck to Mayor Councillor Hitesh Bhai Taylor for the future and also welcome to the incoming Mayor. My prayers and blessings are always with you all. I hope we will meet again in future as I am always available, honored and thankful to provide my prayers and services. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Palkash Bhai. So good evening and welcome, members, officers, and hundreds of people in the public gallery this evening, and to everyone watching on YouTube tonight, to special council meeting to award honorary order status to several former councillors. So those watching online, I'm Councillor Tesh Taylor, Mayor of Ealing. And let me first of all thank Palkash Bhai Trivedi for providing a blessing tonight and for his spiritual guidance as my chaplain for the year. Just some initial housekeeping. This top table is looking a bit bare, but But to my right is our Chief Executive, Tony Clements, and to his right is Sam Bailey from Democratic Services. So with that out the way, we're going to get onto the main proceedings. I am reminded to say that this meeting is broadcast live and a recording retained on the council's YouTube site. And therefore, I presume everyone consents to this happening. And if you don't consent to this, then you should leave the meeting now. And no one is. It's good. So we're going to get on to the first item. Sam Bailey, can you read that? Can you read out the direction? No. Can you read out the apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've had apologies for absence from councillors Steed, Ball and Kumar.
Thank you.
And Binderai, Councillor Binderai, thank you.
Any more?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have Councillor Summers and Councillor Quansah for lateness.
Sure, noted. Thank you. Moving on, item 2, any declarations of interest? No, that's good. Right, we're going to get onto the main item now, which is the appointment of honorary order status. So we will move second and agree the award of each honorary order status separately. Because of time constraints, due to time constraints, only the proposer will be able to speak for up to 3 minutes. And once all the honorary orders have been agreed, they will come to the table at the front, I think it's this one here, to be presented with their certificate and their photograph taken with the mayor. And then, so we're going to move on to the first honorary order. And the first name I've got is John Cudmore. Now, John Cudmore has already been awarded honorary order status, but was unable to collect his award. So instead, I'm going to ask Councillor Johnson to pay tribute to John, and he will be able to collect his certificate at the end of the ceremony, along with the newly made honorary orders. Councillor Johnson, where are you? There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I stand up here to propose John Cudmore for this officially, and I think many of you know him or have heard of him. I think Peter Mason and John have met for the first time this evening, which may sound a bit strange to some of you, but not to those of us who know in politics, a week is a long time. John was elected in 1982, which was probably quite a good year in some ways, because it's the years that Ranjit started, Ranjit Deer, who's still with us. Then Ranjit had a little gap because of work. But then we also had Virendra Sharma and Steve Pound, who started in that year. Now, John went on to greater and greater things. He was always quite an independent person. And when in 1986, we had a fairly, I would say, even I can say this, a fairly left-wing leadership at the time. And John was quite sure that we wouldn't be banning the Times from the public libraries. He said, no, we couldn't do that sort of thing. So he was always very sure and independent. And I'm sorry tonight we won't have here our fellow councillor from South Acton. We were called Heathfield in those days, and that was Glenn Barnum. And he'd have been very pleased to know that John was going to receive this award. John was leader in opposition from 90 to 94, and then he became leader of the council up until 2006. And he did 16 years where he worked full time, believe it or not. And he was very, very busy. He was very good at choosing people. Now, I can say this, perhaps I should declare an interest, but I think he chose the right people to do various things. And he trusted them to get on with the job. And he didn't interfere too much, but he worked very, very hard. Hitachi, who's here tonight and is still working for the council, remembers her and I being told he was on the North Circular. He was on his way. Would we mind going into a meeting and just nodding and being polite and saying we'd report back to him later? And we would do that. But despite all of that, John was one of the first-class leaders that I've ever worked for. Sense of humour, intelligent, and well deserves this honour. So I'm very happy to move it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Johnson. I think it's already been agreed, so we don't have to second this one. The second name I have is Leonora Thompson, and I'm going to call on councillor Steve Donnelly to move that Leonora Thompson be made an honorary order. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with pleasure and pride that I nominate for the position of honorary order my great friend Leonora Thompson, known universally outside her immediate family as Leo. Councillor for Ravener and Greenford Broadway wards 1998 to 2006, Cabinet Member for Children and Young People from 2000, Deputy Leader of the Council 2002 to 2005, and Leader of the London Borough of Ealing 2005 to 2006. Leo's career in politics was a well-disguised case of nominative determinism. That those here who've known her over the years may not be aware that her middle name is Hope. And surely, if we politicians are in any business, it's hope. Leo was part of the glorious class of 1998, alongside current councillors Jazz Bieran, Kate Crawford, Kamaljeet Dinser, Shital Manro, and some upstart called Donnelly. Leo's background was in comms, media, PR, and the arts. Still, by some distance, I think the most cultured leader of Ealing Council, but without any offence to any of the other office holders. From day one, she made a strong impression with her ability, hard work, and sincerity. Plus, she had a secret weapon. Everyone who met Leo liked her, and I mean everyone. In Ealing's first cabinet in 2000, to no one's surprise, Leo was appointed to the portfolio for children and young people, John Cudmall's talent spotting that Yvonne was referring to, where she especially distinguished herself in her work with our looked after children. John Cudmall brought her in to be his deputy from 2002, meaning Leo was perfectly placed and completely ready to take up the reins as leader when John stepped down in 2005. It has to be said there have been more propitious times to become Labour Ealing Council leader, not least because the borough was fiercely divided over a proposed change to its traffic arrangements. Sound familiar? In this case, the West London Tram. Now, it all transpired to be a figment of Ken Livingstone's imagination, but the damage 1 year out from council elections was all too real. But in the 1 year that she had at the top, Leo left a significant and lasting legacy by a series of progressive senior officer appointments, not least that of Dara Singh as chief executive. It would, however, fall to another of this evening's recipients to reap the benefits of that work. After losing her seat in 2006, neither the first nor last leader in Ealing to do so, Leo returned to the world of arts administration at the Barbican and later as managing director of Welsh National Opera. She remains in Cardiff, where in 2022, she was elected to the City Council in a rebirth of her political career. On Thursday evening this week, she will be appointed Cabinet Member for Adults. I often tease Leo in saying that she will describe bad news with the phrase, well, in many ways, it's not too bad. And in many ways, we
time
can
is
say
shutting down.
that hope has truly returned to Welsh politics. Mr. Mayor, I move.
Thank you. So, is that seconded?
Mr. Mayor, I formally second the amendment.
Okay, thank you, councillor Malcolm. Is that agreed? Congratulations. Next up is Jason Stacey. And I'm going to call on councillor Mason to move that Jason Stacey be made an honorary order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason Stacey first stood for election in Ealing for the Costons Ward in actually 1998. And he would win 4 years later alongside his long-standing colleagues, Sue Emmett and Will Brooks, in what was the reorganised named Greenford Green. Becoming the leader of the Conservative Party just 2 years later, Jason would lead the Conservatives to power in 2006 at the local government elections, and at 34 became the council's youngest leader on record. He led an administration with the mantra of value for money, safer communities and cleaner streets, which we all still remember because he embossed it on thousands of tea mugs, many of which can still survive to this day in the tea points across Purcell House. Jason, this one's for you. Leading the council through a time before austerity and at the tail end of the last Labour government, Stacey would have to deal with the consequences of the 2007 global financial crisis, battling a tram, navigating a Southall by-election, enduring the defection of the late Gacharan Singh and the Southall Five, with a sixth purported to be on the brink of defection, but Jason absolutely point blank refused to accept them, much to the annoyance of the Labour group. And of course, usher in a Conservative Mayor of London. But not even a £50 council tax rebate could stem the tide against the Tories when in 2010, Labour would retake control of the council on a bad day for Labour nationally, but a good day for both the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. He stood down from his role as leader of the Conservatives in 2011, succeeded by the soon-to-be fellow Alder, David Milliken. His reputation as a leader was one of seriousness, of being wise, but also a little blunt. On his departure from Ealing in 2016, Martin Smith, whom Jason had appointed the chief executive, would quip in this very room that staff still many years later, when faced with a political or managerial challenge, would often joke, WWJD. What would Jason do? It's therefore fitting and a little ironic that he has had an incredibly successful career after being leader at the Young Men's Christian Association, where he still works. In conveying the award of Alder to Jason, as we are today to all of our former leaders, and in making this a cross-party nomination, we acknowledge that whatever our political or our ideological differences, whatever the outcome of an election, however upsetting, surprising, or unfair it may seem to those who compete in them, they are final, and our mandates are finite, and we are all but temporary custodians of this borough that we love. We are, all of us, working, albeit with different beliefs on how and why, for the residents of this borough, and always in their service. Mr. Mayor, I move that Jason Stacey be awarded the distinction of Alder of the London Borough of Ealing.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Is that seconded?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I second that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Gallant. And members, is that agreed? Well done. One is Julian Bell. I am calling on Councillor Julian Gallant to move that Julian Bell be made an honorary Alder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's a pleasure for me to make this proposal. And I'm going to go one stage further than the council leader and say that when we see the public, and the public are suspicious of us politicians, people who put ourselves up for election, but when they see us talking to each other and talking in conference with each other and agreeing that there's a common goal, they are very pleased. And I shared that with Julian tonight. Now, the rather young and slim man that you see here today is rather belies the fact that he's had 30 years in national and local politics. And he's been on numerous boards. He's a transport policy and infrastructure. He's been chair of London Council's transport and environmental committees. And he's been on the TfL board. And that's before I mentioned that he was in fact leader of Ealing Council for 11 years. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mayor, we look at the Elizabeth line now as if it's some kind of permanent fixture, something that's always been there. We use it, we love it. But there was a time when it was clouded in uncertainty, and I think it's a great credit that those beautiful stations happened in Julian's tenure. Very proud of that. But he did lots of other things as well, lots of other things which we certainly support. The exclusion zone around the Mary Stopes clinic. He's helped to look after the Calais refugees. And of course, he worked tirelessly to build affordable homes in the borough. Now, I know he's a transport expert, but and looking at infrastructure all the time, but he's in fact, what we share is our love of cycling. And I think he can he can thank his bike for the way he's looking today, which is really splendid. But he's also a great supporter of Sheffield United. So this is a public servant who we should all respect, and I'd like to formally and happily propose that you become honorary alder of this borough.
Thank you, Councillor Gallant. So is that seconded?
So seconded.
Thank you. So members, is that agreed? Well done, Julian. Next up is I call on Councillor Stafford to move that Nigel Sumner be made an honorary alder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to propose Nigel Sumner as an honorary alderman this evening. Nigel was elected in 1994 and spent 28 years serving the people of Ealing as a councillor. He was a popular and still is a popular and well-known, and most importantly, he was a diligent councillor. His knowledge of council offices and officers were invaluable, certainly to me as a councillor. And he was a champion, and he is a champion of education and schools, being the chairman of West Acton Primary School, amongst other things. He was a stalwart defender of the heritage of this borough, one of the few on the General Purposes Committee doing his duty to protect the Victoria Hall from commercial gain. And I think he, for me and Councillor Conti, a great support and mentor in Hanger Hill. I mentioned at the start of this speech that I was happy to call him and propose him as an honorary alderman, because I don't believe in the political correct nonsense that we've gone to alder. But of all the people who are being proposed tonight, alder might be the most appropriate, because an alder is a tree. And anybody who knows Nigel knows his absolute love and commitment to the environment. And that was something that his legacy runs through this council. Nigel has been chairman of Ealing and Bloom. He was the portfolio holder under Jason Stacey for a while of the environment, when I have to say this council turbocharged its environmental credentials, much of that down to the work of Nigel. And even after he stopped being in that portfolio, he carried that on both for Ealing and indeed for Hanger Hill, to its great benefit. One quick story, Mr. Mayor. I remember when I was first elected in Hanger Hill alongside Councillor Joy Morrissey, Joy being brand new, but me certainly being brand new to Hanger Hill. Nigel the next day told us that we must present ourselves in Hanger Hill Park with Wellington boots and overcoats and gloves. And he arrived with long loppers and secateurs, and we were sent out to prune the trees in Hanger Hill. I certainly learned very quickly that Nigel was a hands-on councillor, and he was so and continues to serve this borough well. The loss of his seat 2 years ago is one of those unlucky and certainly undeserved quirks of the electoral process. And I know Councillor Conti and I miss him greatly from our deliberations, as do the people of Hanger Hill. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to propose Nigel Sumner as an honorary alderman.
Thank you, Councillor Stafford. Now, is that seconded by anyone?
Yeah, that's seconded.
Thank you. So is that agreed? Although Nigel, okay, next one. Can I call on Councillor Fabio Conti to move that David Milliken be made an honorary alder, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an absolute pleasure to propose former Councillor David Milliken to be an honorary alder. David served the residents of Northfields with the utmost integrity, diligence and care over the 2 stints that he did as a ward councillor, for 4 years in the 1990s and then for 16 years until the most recent local elections in 2022. It's a testament to David that even recently, when we were out campaigning for the GLA elections, that residents still mention him fondly on the doorstep. And I remember when I was a councillor with him campaigning in 2018, many residents would say, we don't vote Conservative, but we vote for David Milliken. And I think that's a testament for all the great work that he'd done. Now, if we look around Northfield Ward, there's still a legacy of the things that he achieved. You know, he led to get Bramley Garden open space redeveloped, the playgrounds on North Road, or the improvements that he championed in Blondin Park. And David's work didn't just went beyond Northfields. I know it seems like a distant memory, but when the Conservatives controlled Ealing Council, David was on the cabinet, and he was a cabinet member for Children's. And later, when we were in opposition, he led the Conservative group, and he is a much missed member of the Conservative council group. Outside of the council, David served as school governor at Fielding Primary School and at Ealing Fields, as well as a trustee for Cultivate London, and even further afield, he went to Burundi on multiple occasions to volunteer over there. So for all his work, both inside the council and outside, I'm privileged to move that David is made a honorary alderman.
Thank you, Councillor Conti. So is that seconded?
So seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Well done, David. And finally, can I call on Councillor Young to move that Joanna Dabrowska be made an honorary alder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is with great pleasure that I propose Joanna Dabrowska as an honorary alderman. Joanna is of Polish stock. Her late father was a World War II refugee who later became an engineer, and her mother, who is here tonight, who was a doctor. Joanna is a local lass, born at Queen Charlotte's Maternity Hospital, and who went to school at St Anne's Convent School in Little Ealing. And like many other Polish children, Joanna also attended Polish Saturday School in Ealing. Joanna studied business, finance, and German, specialising in air transport economics at university. And after university, Joanna embarked on a career in IT at Guinness, then British Airports Authority, and finally British Airways, where she retrained as a management accountant and worked on the Terminal 5 project. Joanna became a councillor for Ealing Common ward, the ward she grew up in 2006, serving 4 terms, 16 years in all. Being bilingual, Joanna held surgeries for Polish-speaking residents of Ealing every month and found people contacting her from all over the country asking for help. Joanna is probably best known for fighting against unauthorised encampments on Ealing green spaces, and fighting not just in Ealing, because Joanna managed to form a virtual enforcement team, linking up the Envirocrine teams in most of the outer boroughs. Joanna's name spread beyond London. She was contacted to help advise local authorities across the country on the subject. And as a result, Joanna successfully lobbied for a change in legislation, which made tackling illegal incursions much easier. Joanna's main interest on the council was planning. Joanna was challenging where necessary. And the length of planning committee meetings, she says, were often dependent on how many questions she asked. Joanna's hidden talents are that she's a very good cook and a brilliant baker. I can say that her cakes need to be tasted to be believed. They're so good. Mr. Mayor, I have the honour of proposing Joanna Dabrowska as an honorary alderman of the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Young. So is that seconded?
That's seconded.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Well done, Joanna. So I can just in a second ask the newly made honorary alders to approach the front table, present their certificates. But I just want to express my gratitude on behalf of everybody for you, all of you, for your years of selfless public service on the council. I haven't worked with all of you, but other councils have expressed that tonight. So, but I know all of you have worked with distinction. So I think give them all another clap, I think. So I think you're going to ask you all to come down to the front. Sorry. Right, thank you, members, for that. Just bear with me a second. So, thank you, members, and thank you, everybody, for that special meeting. We're now going to go on to the annual council meeting tonight. So welcome again, everybody, to the annual council meeting to anoint a new mayor of Ealing. So just briefly, I think apart from chief exec, we have now been joined by a deputy lieutenant tonight as well, Richard Kaniki, who's come along tonight. Right, we're going to go straight on to business on this particular case now. So I'm going to ask Sam. Okay, any apologies for absence?
Councillors Steed, Ball and Rye, and I think, oh, sorry, oh, there you are, sorry. Councillor Ball and Councillor Rye.
Thank you. Are there any names of members join us virtually? No, it's on your notes. All right. Item number 2, members, is does anyone have declarations of interest? I'm taking that as a no. Right, we're going to get onto the main item now, item 3, which is the election of the mayor and appointment of a deputy mayor. So the first item on the agenda is the election of the mayor and appointment of deputy mayor for municipal year 24-25. And I'm going to ask Councillor Blacker to propose for mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. It is my pleasure to rise this evening to make a nomination for the Mayor of Ealing, first citizen of the borough for the 2024-25 civic year. We are looking, I think, for a councillor among us with an unwavering record of public service, a councillor with the utmost dedication, not just to the residents she represents in her ward, but to the entire borough of Ealing. A councillor who will be able to keep us in line as we exhibit passion, perhaps, in debating the issues facing the borough in here, and who will help us relax and unwind upstairs in the parlour afterwards. And we need someone with sufficient standing and respect standing in and respect across this chamber, who can step into the role without perhaps having served the traditional apprenticeship as deputy. I think, and I hope you can agree, that that describes my ward colleague, comrade and friend, Councillor Yvonne Johnson. I should warn you, nobody is perfect and there are flaws. She was not actually born in the borough, but I think we can probably forgive Queen Charlotte's just across the border in Hammersmith. And I am sure that we can forgive that a teaching career of 38 years included North as well as West London, because it at least didn't include anywhere south of the river. And while she didn't manage to move to Acton until 1978, as late as that, well, it was certainly before I managed to, and some of you haven't even bothered yet. But as soon as she was here, she did the right thing. She joined the Labour Party, and with John Gallagher's encouragement and support, was elected to the council in 1986 and hasn't looked back since. And I must say, as a first-time candidate in 2014, it was incredibly daunting knocking on the doors, because more often than not, it was answered by someone whom Yvonne had helped with one piece of casework or another, and would go on about how helpful she had been, and pointedly, how they were voting for her. We do sometimes kid ourselves about our personal vote as councillors, but let me tell you that 38 years of diligent casework certainly helps build one. The mayoralty is one of the few remaining roles she hasn't undertaken on the council, having served as deputy leader on 2 separate occasions, with 11 continuous years in cabinet on her last stint, 8 of them with responsibility for the borough's finances. And given the tellings off and dressings down she has doled out to us over the years for being wicked or just plain naughty little boys, I think we can rest safe in the knowledge that she will run a tight ship in our meetings. And from experience, I can tell you the parlour afterwards should be excellent too. Yvonne's home in South Acton is legendary in the Ealing Labour Party for her election day spread, with at least one organiser over the years trying to... There is much more to be said about Councillor Johnson, most of it when we are not being live streamed, But I am sure you will agree that Councillor Johnson will be a wonderful mayor, supported by consorts Brian, her husband, and Rosemary, one of her sisters, and I ask that the council approve the nomination.
Right, I'm going to ask Councillor Ranjit Deer. Are you going to second?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in my time on the Ealing Council, I've had the privilege of nominating a number of colleagues for this high office. And I have great joy today and indeed a sense of honor for the opportunity to endorse Councillor Johnson's nomination for this office. I have known Councillor Johnson for over 40 years in Ealing's politics. And I know that she is a woman of great integrity, a politician with a deep sense of social justice commitment. And fortunately for all of us, she has an abundance of common sense and good sense of humor, both qualities which are so essential for a tolerant, compassionate democracy, but sadly and seriously in decline today. Councillor Johnson will be supported by her husband, Brian, and her sister, Rosemary, in this job. Brian was born in Parsons Green in the neighboring borough and went to school in Holland Park. The school also attended by Hilary Benn, another distinguished councillor who sat in this chamber for 25 years. Brian and Yvonne met at the Freshers' Ball at Yvonne's second year at university, and they married within 2 years. They were so smitten with each other that they married within 2 years. And Brian, after his education, went to work in civil service. And his first job was as a wealth tax officer. A dream job title for any person with socialist leanings, a wealth tax officer. But seriously, Brian is actually a prototype of the early modern feminist man, because he believes that a woman should have the same support from a husband or a partner that a man enjoys when men go into politics. And this is why he does a lot more stuff than just putting the bins out, changing the bulb, doing the garden and all the mucky, yucky jobs in the house. He does really a great deal. And he's done that for 40 years in their marriage since Yvonne became a councillor. In fact, he was the ward organizer when first Yvonne stood for council in 1986. So I think for all those reasons, and Rosemary is well gelled in the family. They go on holidays together, and I think they'll be a formidable team for this job next year. And I know that Yvonne, as she has done a number of senior jobs in this council for the last 38 years, she will bring great distinction to this job and will do the job well, and in fact, bring dignity to this high office. Mr. Mayor, I beg to second this nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deer. So I'm next going to ask Councillor Steed. Is it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It gives me much pleasure to support the nomination of Councillor Yvonne Johnson to be the first citizen of Ealing. I first encountered Councillor Johnson at the 2006 local election count. My colleague, Councillor Malcolm, has suggested I stand in South Acton, the safe Labour ward where they usually wave a Labour vote. Oh, what fun we had delivering lots of orange bits of paper around the old South Acton estate. Every time we finished one leaflet, I was told the next leaflet was due from the printers. I digress. 2006 was not a good year for Labour, with many unhappy people, many unhappy with the UK's role in George Bush's war in Iraq. Labour held the ward by a small margin, I think by 50 votes. But Councillor Johnson was not the happy, smiling person we have all got used to now. I think spitting feathers may be a more accurate description as the Conservatives took control of the council. How the wheel of fortune can change. But by 2006, Councillor Johnson had already been a councillor for 20 years and a school governor for 22 years. She had already stood for Parliament against Sir George Young in 1992, on what I think now would seem quite a radical manifesto. On that occasion, she was sadly not successful. But Councillor Johnson has gone on to serve another 18 years on the council, and until this year had still been the school governor. She has remained a leading figure in Ealing Labour and been deputy leader, covered the finance portfolio, the pension panel, and undoubtedly has been a power behind the throne. Despite our swords crossing in 2006, she has always remained a friendly colleague on the council, keen for a gossip, as long as I can get her a G&T from the bar. She is a serious politician who does not take herself too seriously. My colleagues and I look forward to working with her over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steed and Councillor Gallan.
Mr. Mayor, actually, Councillor Young is going to welcome new mayor.
Sorry, last minute change. In all my time as a councillor, if anybody asked me who was the best Labour councillor at chairing a meeting, I'd have to say, without a doubt, it would be Yvonne. And the reason is because Yvonne was a teacher and she treats us all as though we're naughty school pupils. So I warn my colleagues at the next council meeting, we're going to have to sit up straight. We mustn't look bored, which might be quite difficult for us. And we won't be allowed to interrupt or to speak out of turn. We'll have to get used to that, I'm afraid. So in short, we'll have to behave ourselves. But the good news is we will finish on time. So I speak in support of Yvonne's nomination, and I look forward to a most successful and memorable year. Thank you.
Young man, you are very naughty. Thank you, Councillor Young. Okay, so here's the challenge. Are there any other more nominations? No, okay. All right, it has been moved and seconded that Councillor Yvonne Johnson be elected mayor for the municipal year 2024-25. Is that agreed? I therefore declare that Councillor Yvonne Johnson is duly elected mayor for the municipal year 2024-25.
So for those tuning in online and those in the gallery, I'm going to do a little commentary as to the bits that you might not be able to see in my best Hugh Edwards impression. Oh yeah, I shouldn't mention that, should I? Right. Yeah. So the mayor is now going to hand the chain over to the deputy mayor. Sorry, the outgoing mayor is going to hand the chain over to the incoming mayor, symbolically to demonstrate the transferring of municipal power from one mayor to the next.
Do you, Councillor Yvonne Johnson, having been elected to the office of Mayor for the Borough, declare that you take the said office upon yourself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties thereof, according to the best of your judgment and ability?
I do.
So can I ask Councillor Blacker and Councillor Dear to come to the front, please? So the new mayor is going to sign the declaration of acceptance of office, witnessed by the councillors who proposed and seconded her.
I'm not going to be using a laptop, I'm afraid, not at council meetings. So you'll have to get used to the fact it's going to be paper with me. But right, so thank you very much. Can I call upon no, I have to talk very briefly about myself. Enough has been said. I was born in Hammersmith. I'm very local. Brian and I have lived here. Right, so can I thank the retiring mayor who's still with us, and we're going to say goodbye to his consort.
Outgoing consort is going to have the consort's badge removed.
Thank you. My consorts this year will be my husband, Brian Johnson, and my sister, Rosemary McLaughlin. Thank you. I was jumping ahead, as you saw, because I wanted this lesson to finish a bit earlier so we could all get to our dinner. But never mind. Let me say that, as we said earlier, I was born in the old Queen Charlotte's. Brian and I have lived in Acton for quite a number of years. We've enjoyed living in Acton. Once, I think Josh and I both had letters from a woman complaining about traffic in Newton Avenue or Meon Road or something, and saying, oh, she'd have rather lived in Chiswick. And I said to her, I was very pleased to live in Acton, but, you know, we get all sorts and we have to be reasonably polite to them, and you learn that as a councillor. But can I say that I'm very honoured to be here tonight, and I never thought I'd be in this position, but I'm very pleased to be here, and I hope that if I get too full of myself that somebody gives me a tap with this mace, so if I get carried away, but I hope I won't get mayoritis. And I'm not saying that anybody in this room did, but sometimes people get a bit carried away. So can I thank Ryan, who's supported me, and as Ranjit said, has had to do a lot more shopping and cooking than most men do, but he's never minded because he likes shopping, he likes cooking, and he enjoys his food. And if you see his teeth tonight, it's not me that knocked them out. It's just an unfortunate accident, and they'll be fixed soon, don't worry. So I thank everybody. I'm hoping that I have a good year. I've got 2 charities. I've got representatives from my charities here tonight. Acton Homeless Concern, who I was one of the founder members of, and CAPE, who do a lot to help people with mental health problems. So I understand everyone's busy and you get all these things inviting you to this, that, and the other. And I know people can't get to everything. If you buy the occasional raffle ticket or manage to support one event, I'd be very grateful. So can I thank you? And now I'm going to hand over to Councillor Mason to give a vote of thanks to the outgoing retiring mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I think we will all be saying and thinking in the year ahead, follow that. I rise to offer a vote of thanks to the outgoing Mayor of Ealing, Councillor Hitesh Taylor. As so many of us know, Hitesh joined the council in 2010, representing the then East Acton ward, and immediately entered the cabinet. Such is a testament to his work, the work that he did not just on the campaign, but of course in his professional life in housing, was able to take on that honour. And it was therefore absolutely wonderful to be able to welcome him to the post of Mayor of Ealing for this municipal year. And what a year he has had. Now, if last year's Mayor, Councillor Midder, was of course the Mayor to enjoy a coronation, Councillor Taylor was the real regal mayor, because his hand has not only shook the Queen Camilla's hand, but Hitesh Taylor is now the only mayor in the history of the London Borough of Ealing to have met the King. And that is something quite special when the King joined us at Pitshanger Manor and to inspect not just the Christmas fair, but also to spend a little time in the borough too. It's been an important year. Now, we pride ourselves as a borough of being incredibly representative. We have 170 languages spoken in our schools, and 60% of the borough, according to the census, 60% of the people who live in this borough were born overseas. We are perhaps one of the most diverse places in Britain. And therefore, it has always been both our honour and privilege as a Labour group to be able to propose mayors from all parts of the rich tapestry that make up our borough. And incredibly important for Hitesh, not just one of the few Hindu mayors that we have had over time, but the first of Gujarati heritage. And that has been, therefore, so important for Hitesh to be able to represent that part of our community and take us for the first time in his year for the first civic ceremony at the Sri Jalaram Mandir in Greenford. He has worked tirelessly in support of his 2 charities of Ease and Apple this year, and I think that we can all agree holds the distinction of not only being a thoroughly modern mayor in his publications of his of all of his diary all of his diaries and his reports and the modernization of that whole process, but he's also a deeply, deeply traditional mayor too. Not only did he oversee the refurbishment of the mayoral chain that now sits around Councillor Johnson's neck, but he was also the mayor that ensured we bought a bicorn hat. Now, I have yet to see Hitesh Taylor wear that bicorn hat, and I am hoping and praying that by the end of the evening that we see it. So, Hitesh, is it under the table? No. The cycle of a mayor is always short. It feels so much quicker in time than it invariably ever is. But Hitesh, you have done a noble job across the borough over this past year, bringing joy and a sense of belonging and a sense of pride and thanks to everybody that you have met in that role, in the best spirit of the mayoralty of the borough. We thank you for your service as you retire, and you join us once again on the backbenches of the Labour Group. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. There's a vote of thanks. Oh, sorry, we have to have the seconders. So, yes, I am trying to jump too quickly. Yes, go ahead. Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you. Dear Hitesh, did your year somehow pass quicker than other years? If one is really very busy, time really passes very fast, and you have been very busy indeed. Besides the regular duties of citizen ceremonies, openings and visits, you've been very engaged with your charities, Apple and Ease. Supporting the most vulnerable in our society is surely your passion and is very admirable. I'm sure they are very grateful for your contribution and providing support and increasing their profile. I just wonder whether that was the same for you and worked in the same way for your favorite football team. Above all, as mentioned, you are now a very prominent member of our borough, having had the honor of welcoming His Majesty the King to our borough. And it is surely a memorable event for the whole of Ealing, but surely also personally for yourself. And you will remember it for many years to come as a really pride moment in your tenure. As for your duties in the chamber, you have decided to normally wear and simply wear your chain rather than the more ceremonial gown you wear today, which you reserved for special occasions. And this kind of style you have also brought to our full council meetings. We on the Liberal Democrat benches, and I'm sure many others, have really enjoyed your very kind of personal, your very humorous and joyful touch you brought to the council. And you infused our meetings, which are sometimes very competitive, sometimes even abrasive, with this your personal humorous touch, reminding us to be behaving civilly and not taking ourselves too seriously. Now, there's one memorable event I'll have to recall, and it might be just only me who can recall that, because in the old chamber, you might remember, I was sitting straight opposite you. And there was one occasion, and it might only be me who actually noticed it. We had a named vote, and you by mistake almost voted with the Liberal Democrats. Sadly, that was obviously by mistake, I think, but nevertheless, something I do remember about your tenure. Leaves me to thank you from the Liberal Democrats for your hard work and service you brought to the borough in the last year. Thank you.
Councillor Stafford.
Actually, it's me. Actually, Madam Mayor, it'll be me. It'll be me.
Gallant.
Yes. Madam Mayor, thank you very much, and it gives me great pleasure also to congratulate you, Hitesh, on your year as mayor. Actually, Councillor Kumar would have been giving this speech tonight, so you just think of her as giving it through me, because she's also very grateful and she's been very happy to support your charities. You really are a very sort of professional man, Hitesh, and you've done a very, very good job, and you've been there all the time. But it's not just about you carrying off your duties well. We've heard all about it, we don't need to repeat that, but it's also about this kind of clarity, dignity that you bring to the job, and curiosity as well. So you're actually curious to find out about things you don't know about, and I admire that very much. I've seen you attend lots of arts events. There you are. Sometimes you stay longer, and I see everyone else peeling off at the interval or sort of at the end, and there you're still sitting there, tapping your foot to a jazz concert or whatever it is. So that's really good. Your charities, obviously, Apple is a long-standing charity, but Ease was right on the mark, and you actually went. I mean, we all know that actually when you came in, it hadn't quite received its status. but he held in there and it did receive its status, and it's doing a really good job with some very, very vulnerable people in the borough. And I'm actually delighted that Acton Charities, I'm the clerk of Acton Charities, we've actually been able to help ease too and put some assistance in there. So, you know, congratulations. You've got lots more to do, lots more to carry on with. I don't believe you'll consider yourself much of a backbencher, but there we go. You've been a good friend to all of us, and you're a good man. Thank you very much, Hitesh.
It's been moved and seconded that a vote of thanks should be recorded to Councillor Taylor. Is that agreed? Thank you. And now I'm going to pass over to Councillor Taylor to make his speech.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors and distinguished guests in the gallery. You can probably what's going to come next. So the glory moments of last May, now given away to dying embers of this May. We gave it our best shot in trying circumstances. You know what's coming. The unexpected hurdles, the surprise events, all accompanied by the goodwill messages of the masses. Yes, Luton Town Football Club has been quite a journey, and it finally ended on Sunday. And tonight, my journey ends too. And you know what? Together, we had fun, and we gave it all. Above all, excuse my language here, we did a bloody good job. And in some respects, it's been reflected upon. I did a job. It's the ambassadorial role as first citizen of the borough to shine a light on the good things that happen across the whole borough, the responsibility and the prestige with the role. And over the year, we've done about 300 events this year. We've coped, obviously, with the move away from the town hall to a new Bear Parlour. The new mayor's already going to decorate it. She's told me that. And of course, we lost the deputy mayor last year as well. And then Councillor Manuel, I didn't take up your offer last year of deputising for me if I was away. That's the offer you made last year. We've sought to be open, inclusive and transparent. And by open, I mean encouraging the organisation, community groups who to ask the mayor to attend events, because many actually don't know to include the mayor for their events. And by inclusiveness, you know, we've gone across the borough from the Green Days Festival in Chiswick to the Carnivals of Acton and Hamwell, the Chariot Festival in Ealing to the Janmashtami and Nurga Curtain processions in Southall, representing the Japanese community and the Matsuri in Trafalgar Square. And of course, the Eternal Flame for the Armenian community as well, and the launch of different arts events across the borough. And of course, each council meeting, we began the meetings with different messages of goodwill from each of the faiths and none, from the LGBT humanist in June to my own chaplain tonight. And of course, as the council has pointed out, it's these reports that we've done really to reflect what the mayor does do, I think, as well, has been quite important as well. There's been obviously amongst the 300 many highlights. I'm going to go through them, and many big ones, but sometimes actually the little events actually can make the most impact for communities when you just turn up and it might just half a dozen people. And it's that engagement and talking to people. The big highlights obviously is meeting His Majesty King Charles III on December the 7th. And I do have to highlight the date because my family would know, because that date was also the date of my mum's 75th birthday. So I faced the inevitable task of calling her on a WhatsApp in the afternoon, explaining why I couldn't get to Milton Keynes that day and see her. Only once I told her I was meeting the King did she let me off. And of course, we had the privilege of meeting Queen Camilla in August as well. We had the first LGBT Pride event in June across the road. And as Councillor Mason said, the first civic service we had in January at the Sri Jaralam Mandir, which is really, as I set out last year, an important marker for diversity. But we also had fun. We were dancing with, well, I was dancing with nurses on NHS Day. We've had the Macathon events. I think a number of councils took place in Ealing Broadway. Didn't fall off the skate line in Beaconsfield Road. And are playing croquet at Walpole Park and being serenaded to a Spandau Ballet song by Brentford Penguins. Anyway, and given my heritage, you can imagine I was very much in demand for Hindu cultural events like Navaratri, Diwali and Holi. Before I get to my thanks, Madam Mayor, I mentioned about my charities. Apple Pay has got its new kitchen now, which is one of the key drivers we set out last year. And Ease has seen its demand grow, and not necessarily in a good way, if you like, but actually reflects the important demand that there is. And both volunteers from both charities came with me from Acton last week to the Gerald and Mundy in Greenford. So just in terms of thank you, let me, of course, thank my family, particularly my mother who's not here today, but bearing my absence last year, and of course my consort, my niece Chetala, who's played the role with aplomb when she's been called upon for such a young person. Of course, grateful and proud that she, Gerald and Mundy, for their unstinted support throughout the year. The friends within the council and outside the council, thank you. There's some, I will say, because he's in the audience as well, is past Mayor John Gallagher for his support, and I know he's going to be supportive of the new mayor equally as well. And I will say thank you for our Deputy Lieutenant Richard Kaniki, who's been a pleasure to be alongside at events too. And I can thank us councillors supporting the charitable causes, even if you hated me. But I do need to mention in particular councillors just for their generous contributions. And don't take it personally, others, but it was, I will say, Councillor Jasmine Renan was one, Manroe was another, Councillor Kamar, who's not here tonight, and Councillor Young as well. And of course, I mustn't forget the Mayoralty staff, because I will get in trouble. They won't take me home again. Cheryl, the secretary, has faced a challenging year, has coped very well, actually, and Ayaz, who is professional as they come. And Madam Mayor, I hope you do like flowers, because you'll get a lot as presents from event hosts. I always gave mine to Ayaz. Thankfully, his wife is very understanding. Otherwise, imagine the trouble he'd be in every time he came home late with a bunch of flowers. But look, as I end my season and now relegated to the backbenches, so let me end with one final sentence. It's a line from the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore in his poem, King of the Dark Chamber. It's a line that reflects the attitude of many of the community voluntary sector groups out there who want to improve things, as well as those who want to seek change. And it's this: you can't cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water. So that's it for me. Good luck, Madam Mayor, for the year ahead.
Thank you very much. And I hand you your past mayor's badge.
Thank you.
And I think you're going to be handing the badge to, or have you already done that, to the consort?
He's not so old.
No, you haven't. I have great pleasure to say that I have appointed Councillor Anthony Kelly to be the Deputy Mayor.
Sorry?
To sign. The Deputy Mayor's consort will be Mrs. Maria Kelly. You don't have to change. Now the formal meeting, and I'll try not to jump too far ahead, even though I know we're nearly at the end. This is the important part of the business. Can I ask that Councillor Shaw move the appointments to committees and other bodies?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move said appointments as listed on the agenda.
I second that, Madam Mayor.
Is that agreed? Councillor Shaw to move the changes to the Constitution.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I move said changes.
I second, Madam Mayor.
Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay, right. Now we're going to take a picture, apparently. So where do you want us to look, Mr. Bailey? So you're all going to have to turn around, I think. Is that right? Can we face the back of the room?
Which couldn't, apparently wasn't allowed to step back.
They weren't allowed to step back.
But you can fall off it. You can fall off a chair instead. Well, I think she's.
Oh, yes, which means. Right. My keenness to get finished, as you can see. Can I just ask people to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of April? Thank you. And Mayor's announcements. I haven't got any announcements other than to say thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy your dinner. Thank you.
Could members remain in their seats after the mayoral party has processed out?
And that concludes the meeting. So if I could ask you all to make your way to the University of West London immediately, and the mayor will join you. Please don't stop to take photos of the mayor or speak to the mayor. You'll get lots of opportunities to at the reception afterwards. Thank you.